We're going on an adventure.
And that's exactly what I did. I set out on a long journey by myself. Not to be dramatic, but I packed up all my tools, my clothes, and I left. I left with a purpose. I wanted to help make a difference. I left to Cerro Gordo. And with that, the 350-mile journey through the Sierra Nevadas began. I traveled through Yosemite National Park, which is beautiful this time of the year. The air was crisp, cold, and fresh. I made my way onto Route 395 and I headed south. As I got closer to my final destination, I couldn't help but to get a little bit nervous. I mean, I did just travel almost 8 hours into the middle of nowhere. Before I took off on this wild adventure, I was in brief contact with Brent Underwood, who single-handedly brought the town of Cerro Gordo back to life. He purchased the town back in 2020 during COVID, which at the time seemed like the fate of humanity was uncertain. In the late 1800s, over $500 million worth of silver was mined in Cerro Gordo. At one point, it was even the largest producer of silver in the state of California. Naturally, I became hooked on Brent's videos about Cerro Gordo. There's so much rich history in this town that it's pretty difficult to watch these videos and not want to come here. I drive a Prius, and it's great for everything I need it for. Well, minus climbing up a steep mountain to 8,000 feet where Cerro Gordo is located. I bring this up because this is the part in the story where I meet Avery, the assistant manager to the town. He's the man that will get you anything you need up and down the mountain, including me and my tools. And before I knew it, I found myself arriving in Keeler, California, a small town with a population of just 31. Avery was already waiting for me when I got there. He helped me move all of my tools and luggage over to his truck and we hit the road. As we were climbing the mountain, I couldn't help but realize how massive everything was. I had this idea in my mind that Cerro Gordo was on the side of a little hill for some reason. The road began winding back and forth and we kept going higher and higher. I'm not exactly afraid of heights, but I'm also not the biggest fan of heights either. I remember looking out the window of the little Toyota pickup and thinking, we had to be close. It's a long way down. When we finally pulled up to the town, I realized it was much steeper than it looks on YouTube. This was something that became very apparent later on as I walked around town. Those hills did not get any less steep the longer you were there. We arrived around 2:30 in the afternoon and quickly got to work. Brent had just received an old wooden piano and we all helped him to move it out of the truck and into the hoist house. Once we were done, I dropped off my tools at the hunter cabin. This is where all of the work I would be doing was at. The hunter cabin is currently being remodeled and transformed into a recording studio. I met with Olmo there, who had already begun working on some of the demo for the project, and we worked out a plan to attack the leaky roof first and foremost. We all had dinner in the Gordon house, and after dinner, Brent invited us to go watch the sunset at one of his favorite spots. We all hopped in a truck and headed farther up the mountain. Once we arrived at the spot, Brent took us to see a mine entrance that had recently collapsed. The views up there were out of this world. We got to see Death Valley on the backside and Owens Lake, which had the sun setting just past it. The next day started bright and early. If it's not the sun waking you up, it's the cold that'll do it. Every morning we would meet in the Gordon house for coffee and breakfast. This is the part of the day where we all talked about what everyone's role for the day was and what we'd all be working on. The communal, family-like atmosphere at Cerro Gordo is really something special. There were some volunteers traveling the US from Switzerland, Olmo who flew in from out of state, me from Northern California, there was a gentleman from Southern California, and then there was even others. But the point that I'm trying to make is that everyone was from all over the place with all sorts of different backgrounds, but we all came together for a common goal. We wanted to leave Cerro Gordo just a little bit better than how we found it. The mornings at Cerro Gordo are extra chilly until the sun makes its way over the hilltop. I'd go from being bundled up with multiple layers to just my t-shirt within a couple of hours. It's always interesting to me working with someone new. I typically like to let someone lead the way unless they want me to lead. In this case, Olmo was already working on this project, so I followed his lead and threw in my ideas as we went. We got to a point where we really fell into a good rhythm and everything just started to flow. A lot of these cabins were built in the time of necessity, not exactly built to last. It's really amazing to see all the framing that has been done throughout the years. They just did what they could and fixed things as they started to fail. It was definitely a challenge to stray away from my normal way of building, with level lines and straight cuts. Me and Olmo sort of had to adapt to the same way these cabins were built before and simply make things work. I remember when we built the wall that the stringers sit on, Olmo said, "Okay, let's build this one level," which got me so excited to finally do something the so-called right way. I arrived at Cerro Gordo on a Thursday and left on Sunday, so that only gave me 3 days to really work with, which is not much time when you're talking about building something. I had set a goal that I wanted to at least get the plywood down on the roof before I had to leave. Luckily, Olmo was up for the challenge, and we both worked diligently during my time there. The Hunter cabin now has a fully functioning roof that will be able to stand the test of time for many years to come. I'm really happy me and Olmo were able to work on this project together, and I'm really looking forward to heading back to Cerro Gordo next year and hopefully working on even more projects. All in all, my experience at Cerro Gordo was one I'll never forget. That town has something really special to offer, from its beautiful landscape to its rich history. But without Brent, none of us would really know about Cerro Gordo. If it wasn't for his insane passion for that town, Cerro Gordo would likely disappear with time and weather. I want to thank Brent for his continued efforts in restoring Cerro Gordo back to its glory days. And also thank you to everyone at Cerro Gordo for making me feel welcome and part of the family. I had so much fun, and I'm happy to have been able to help. I'll see you all soon.